by the way, before we run out of time, all I've been able to show you here tonight is a glimpse of a glimpse. What I've done is created, if you will, a PhD program in the ancient mysteries. I'm going to do a 13-part series. 13 was the ancient Kabbalistic number of unity. It has geometric significance. I like the number. Some people think it's unlucky. I like the number. But we're going to do a series of 13 classes. And what we'll do is each class we will use the geometry exercises as a launching off matrix to get into some different aspect of these ancient mysteries. So we'll get very deeply into symbolism, get much, much more into this model of the great year. Because, quite obviously, if we are approaching one of those nodal points, it would probably be prudent for us to be aware of that fact, right? Because you've got to understand, some people misread what I'm doing when I make this presentation. They think that I'm presenting some kind of a gloom and doom scenario, some kind of a fatalistic, throw up our hands, we're all going to die in some great catastrophe. That's not how I look at it. Here's the way I look at it. Growing up in rural Minnesota, we knew that there were certain things. We lived in a tornado belt. So everybody out where I lived had a storm shelter. So that if a tornado came your way, you could take refuge in the storm shelter or in your basement. And I had to do that several times. We had tornadoes on at least one occasion that actually just hopped, leapfrogged right over our house. If you live out on the San Andreas Fault and you're building yourself a house, you take certain precautions. You do certain things in case the ground shakes, your house doesn't fall down on you. If you live out on the coast of Florida or the eastern coast of the United States with a beautiful beachfront house, it would be prudent to take certain measures to be able to withstand the occasional hurricane that's going to come through there from time to time during the lifespan of your domicile. Right? We could go on with the analogies here. Why do people have a problem with it when I say that, well, we have to take the same sort of attitude, but on a planetary scale, and realize that we are not each other's enemies. The Muslims are not our enemies. The Russians are not our enemies, whoever. In fact, we're all in the same boat together, and we're going to float or sink together. And if we are working together, we can make it. If we're busy being distracted by each other and imagining that our neighbor on another part of the planet is our enemy, we're going to miss the real enemy, the cosmic enemy, if you want to put it that way. And it's not really an enemy, it's a force of nature. And like all forces of nature, they can be beneficial or they can be malevolent. But their malevolence is going to be primarily whether or not we are in a position to respond. Or even, and here is the supreme insight to me, even to perhaps mitigate what has been known in the mythical traditions as the curse. In the Bible, it's the curse that came upon the earth. When the curse that fell upon the earth, I will curse the ground for thy sake. When the serpent beguiled Eve in the conventional dogmatic interpretation, and humans were expelled from the garden. This is a metaphor for an unfolding of a series of natural events that changed the course of human life on this planet. When you interpret them dogmatically and literally, they make no sense. But when you realize that they're symbolic, it's the same curse that got revivified when Cain slew his brother Abel, and Abel's blood spilled into the ground, and the earth opened her mouth to receive the blood of Abel. Same curse. The same curse that came upon the earth when Noah was told to build his ark, his vessel, his place of refuge, where the seeds of life from one world could be transported across the abyss to the new world. On that day, in the second month of the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 17th day of the month, that all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. You see, this is what I've been talking about, these times in the cycle when the windows of heaven open. And whether or not we want to rise to the challenge that this new knowledge has presented to us won't make any difference. For when the time comes and it's ready, the windows will open as they have opened before. And if we're ready, we'll be able to deal with it. If we're not ready, we'll be back in the Stone Age. Now that's why I'm doing this, is because the key to our survival is knowledge. In the book of Hosea, he says, "For my people were destroyed for their lack of knowledge." Talking about when the world was destroyed within the waters of the great flood. And in the book of Matthew, when the people were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that the flood came and swept them all away. So shall it be again in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Now, when he talks about the Son of Man, this is a metaphor for something. And the Son of Man is actually an entity that can be identified if you have the key to unlocking the symbolism. And it is not what the fundamentalists have imagined it to be. It's something completely different. In fact, it's so different that if you presented a fundamentalist with it, they would probably immediately freak out and either run away or try to strangle you. So, and it's not that he's condemning eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage. It's just he's saying, don't get so distracted by the triviality of day-to-day life that you forget the bigger picture. In the Hopi Indian stories, what you read is that the people forgot the plan of the Creator. That creative power that has singled out this world within a universe of incipient worlds has endowed us with a plan, a blueprint, if you will. And this has been the treasure, the true treasure. We've seen these movies have come out lately, American Treasure, hinting at that there's some great treasure preserved by the Freemasons. Well, there is a treasure that has fallen within the custodianship of the Freemasons and other groups as well. But it's not the treasure of gold and coins and jewels, it's the treasure of knowledge. It's the blueprints themselves, the blueprints of creation that were given to us as a legacy from the great architect. And it's those blueprints that we can open, examine, and re-engineer the system to know how to get the planet back on course. And in fact, that's one of the key insights of the ancient wisdom knowledge, is that this curse that plays itself out on the earth periodically is not inevitable. That is the key message I'm trying to get across. It is not inevitable. It only becomes inevitable through our ignorance. And note that the root of the word ignorance is ignore. If we ignore the cosmic signs, that is what will create the susceptibility to the next catastrophe. And it is that I firmly believe that we can circumvent. Circumvent. Here's a geometric term. The keys are contained in many domains of knowledge: geometry, astronomy, geology, the study of the structure of the earth under our feet, geomancy, the study of the patterns of energy within the structure of the earth and in the sky, within the Kabbalistic traditions, within the Hermetic and alchemical traditions, within the studies of the great religious traditions of mankind. We find all of the elements scattered about the planet, waiting until the time when a universal global civilization could emerge, and then the pieces could start being reassembled to get the outlines of the world that once was. And then we will have a vision of the world that could be. But until that time, we're just fishing in the dark. So I think we'll end it there for now. And I want you to make comments or even ask questions for a few minutes before we break it up for the night. And if you want to do some further study, yes. And then what we would do is we would embark upon a geometric journey, or a journey into the realm of symbolism. And hopefully at the end of 13 weeks, you will be able to open the ancient book of the ages and read things that you're now not capable of reading. And we do hands-on. We would buy certain equipment so we could actually mimic the exercises. In the class, what we do is we sit around tables because we draw, do a lot of drawing, as you did in the Pythagorean or Platonic lodges of old. Because that's the best way to get these patterns and these diagrams in your consciousness, is by taking it, getting the hand and eye and mind working together. And then we progress, if we go beyond the 13 weeks, then we progress into actually building three-dimensional models and so forth, such as the ones that I brought here that I wanted to talk about tonight. But alas, we're running out of time, so I won't get to introduce you to my 5 friends, the Platonic Solids, some of my very best friends of all time. But concealed within these, I'll just show you how the connections work. You remember I talked about a season of the great year, and I said a number. Who remembers the number? 1/4 of the great year from Aquarius back to Taurus is how many years? Anybody remember? 6,480 years. Now here is a dodecahedron, which Plato said represented the most perfect model of the universe, and it has 12 pentagonal faces. On a pentagon, and this is one of the things you learn when you study sacred geometry, is that each angle is 108 degrees. So you have on each pentagonal face 108 degrees times 5, which is 540 degrees. And then you have 12 faces. Those 12 faces times the 540 degrees gives you the full measure of this three-dimensional representation, Plato's model of the universe, right? Well, what is 12 times 540? 6,480. So you now have the same sacred number linking the measurement of time and the measurement of space. But then, of course, we can turn to the ancient records and read that the Sumerian kings ruled for a period of 6,480 years, and so on. I told you that one Platonic month, 1/12 of the great cycle, was how many years? 2,160 years. 2,160 times 3 gives us the 6,480. Here we have the cube, which was traditionally the shape of the altar that sat in the middle of the temple. The altar that was placed usually over the omphalos, the sacred center. In a cube, we have 6 square faces, 90, 90, 90, 90. So we have 4 times 90 angles. It's 4 times 90, 360. 6 times 360 gives us 2,160 degrees. Measures the cube. The same number of degrees as there are years in a Platonic month. And the connections and correlations go on and on and on. The same sacred numbers measuring space and time. And these were the sacred numbers used to build the ancient temples of old. So it gets into some really interesting stuff. Also, I might mention that in terms of the sacred measure of the mile, which is based upon the average length of 1,000 human paces, we have the foot. Everybody has a foot that anchors you to the earth. And you have the pace by which you move across the face of the earth. In ancient Rome, at the center of the city was a post, the pole. Remember the post set into the ground? And you still have, to this day, going back from the times of ancient Rome and ancient Greece, a city center marked out in miles, radiating out. Right? We still do that. You do it from downtown Atlanta, somewhere down by 5 Points. I don't know exactly where it is. Okay, now that represented 1,000 average human paces. 1, 2, 3. The Latin word for 1,000 is mil, right? Hence our word mile. So when we take 1,000 human paces, that gives us our mile of 5,280 feet. Now, as you'll find out, the mile is a very ancient unit of measurement. It was being used and recognized by the builders of Stonehenge. Because, in fact, the radius of the outer circle of Stonehenge is 52.8 feet. which is 1/100th of a mile. That's no coincidence. Okay, that mile as a unit of measurement, as a yardstick, steps across the face of the full moon 2,160 times. So once again, we have this emergence of the same sacred number describing disparate phenomena. And this is what we find over and over and over again throughout this kind of study when we get into the hidden architecture of creation. So I guess that'll conclude tonight's introductory talk.